Welcome back to McNulty's Book Corral. Here we are in December, and wow, I got back from the cabin and time just flew by. And you know how it is. You've heard this before, I'm sure, from a lot of people. Once you retire, you're more busy than you were when you worked. And that's true because you have more irons in the fire. So with that said, anyways, I've been wanting to do a Doc Savage episode for some time. Here it is, Doc Savage, the Man of Bronze. So I'm going to talk about Doc Savage in some general terms to begin with. He first appeared in 1933. The series ran until 1949. Lester Dent was the primary writer of the 181 stories that were published, if that's correct. He wrote 159 of the 181. And Lester Dent was a prolific, awesome writer. We're going to talk about him in a minute. So the series was popular during the golden age of pulps, along with The Shadow and The Spider and so many others that I've talked about. But Doc Savage is one of those that's special. So I'm going to talk today about Doc Savage from the perspective of my discovery of Doc Savage, which occurred in the 1960s when Bantam Books began reprinting all 181 stories with cover artwork by James Bama. So again, I don't know if they specifically published them in the exact order that they were originally published, but they did do all of them, and that's my understanding. Interestingly enough, as a side note, I'm doing a Excel spreadsheet bibliography of the main series that I've collected, and I discovered I have some issues missing from this, but I also have the other reprints. This is the Bantam, the original, with the James Bama cover. This is the Bantam, so that's the 60s. This is the 72, I think, when the Ron Ely movie came out. Here's Ron Ely on the back, and it has a special photo section in it from the movie. So these Doc Savage paperbacks published by Bantam were reprinted time and time again. So a note to you collectors out there, they're not necessarily rare in this form. The pulps might be harder to get, but those are deteriorating. So the Bantam books are really the preferred collector's item. And a lot of eBay dealers list various issues as rare, various editions. They're all numbered. This is number one. I don't agree with that they're mostly rare. Maybe there was a low print run on some of the later ones, which it ran until what? Did it run until the 90s? Something like that? However, they went on for years. But Bantam started this in the 60s, and it went on for decades. And they reprinted and reprinted and reprinted. That was my discovery with James Bama's stylistic cover. Here's a better view of James Bama. Now, the series was also reprinted, although not in its entirety by Nostalgia Ventures and Sanctum Books. And this is The Man of Bronze combined with The Land of Terror in one volume. And for this particular edition, they used the Bantam cover, so you get a good look at this. I'll have a scan coming up. James Bama was following in the footsteps of, let me reach over here. He was following in the footsteps of Walter Baumhofer. And I'm sorry, I didn't have this ready. Here's Walter Baumhofer, right, a cover from the original. This is the same thing. This is Sanctum Books and Nostalgia Ventures. They started to reprint these, and this is what the original covers would have looked like. Doc Savage is depicted here as more of a movie star, 1930s movie star guy, and fun stuff. We're going to talk about what makes Lester Dent's writing fun. But that's my introduction to it. And I remember specifically, and I'm such a collector nerd, I had to have two of the Bantams and I have one of the Nostalgia Ventures, with the great cover artwork. And of course, I have the poster on the wall. I am a Doc Savage fanatic. Super fan. So as I'm talking, I'm just going to have different editions pop up. I just scanned a bunch for you just to show you, here's 42, The Gold Ogre. I don't really have a favorite Doc Savage novel. I have multiple favorite Doc Savage novels. They were so much fun, so entertaining. So listen, Lester Dent, well, first of all, James Bama, I have to go back to that. I apologize. James Bama did a stylized version of Doc Savage with his widow's peak. So he is described somewhere as having a widow's peak, or the editor, possibly the editor and art director. I read an article about this. They may have been the ones to describe Doc Savage having this strange-looking metallic skull cap, which in the books he did wear. He didn't necessarily have a widow's peak in the actual text. As far as I recall, he didn't. It was added by James Bama, and that has become the standard look. There are some pictures I'm going to have popping up on the screen here about the model. His name was Steve Holland, and over here, you can't quite see it, there's a stack of Westerns that go all the way to the ceiling. I have plenty of vintage Westerns where Steve Holland was the model for the cover. I'm just looking to see, is there one here that I can grab? Probably not. It would be a shame if I couldn't show you that, but I have tons of those. You guys, you collectors already know this. This episode is probably going to be more useful for you younger readers who have not read a Doc Savage novel. I'm not going to say anything here that you longtime fans don't already know. You probably know more than I do, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm just a fan. I'm not an expert on anything I talk about in any episode. But anyway, so we have the stylized widow peak. Steve Holland, who is in 1.5 million Western paperbacks and other types of paperbacks. He was a very successful model. He had a very modest acting career. He played Flash Gordon in an early 1950s TV show, and that type of thing. So Steve Holland is Doc Savage. James Bama used him. There were other artists that worked on the Bantam Doc Savage covers. It's James Bama that set the tone, and these books were incredibly successful. Here's number 46. This is a great one, The Midas Man. What a great cover. I'll have scans of this. This stuff is going to be coming up. I have so many of these. More here, more over there. I mean, it's ridiculous. And the fact that I don't have them all, which I only just learned this year because I pulled them out of storage, and I'm starting my Excel spreadsheet on the collection, and I was really pissed off at myself when I realized I'm missing some. I think I have 80%, I think, when I tabulated it, which is a lot less than I thought I had. I wasn't sure that I had every Bantam one. Even with the Sanctum reprints, I still don't quite have every story. With this collection, which is up here on this shelf, I don't think you can see it, I have these in the shadow, and I have a lot of these, and I have more of these in storage. So maybe when I get to documenting these, I'll have all of the stories, but I don't have all of the Bantam editions. That's a shame, because the Bantam editions are great. So what makes Lester Dent and Doc Savage so appealing? Lester Dent, and you can look this up, Lester Dent has his formula for writing adventure stories, and it's posted online on numerous websites. Just Google Lester Dent's writing formula, and you'll get to read it yourself. And it worked. It worked for him. It works for others. He was right on with it. Lester Dent was one of those writers like Walter B. Gibson and Edgar Rice Burroughs and these guys, Lawrence Donovan, and so many of them. You know, they could sit down at a typewriter and the language flowed. It wasn't forced. It was a natural ability they had to tell stories. Even today, I consider that a rare thing. Maybe I should qualify that. To tell stories well. That's the difference. So to tell stories well is a talent. That's not learned behavior. That's not a learned artwork type thing. It's talent, raw, unbridled talent. Lester Dent, the great Lester Dent, the Mystic Moolah. Look at this stuff. I mean, these books are so entertaining. So Doc Savage himself is described as the man of bronze because he has a perpetual tan. He has bronze type copper-colored hair, whatever you want to call it. He has flecks of gold glittering in his eyes. He's described by Lester Dent as having almost superhuman powers. Those abilities vary dramatically throughout all 180 plus books, yet they're entertaining. You know, he maintains that credibility. Now, he's considered by many to be the first real superhero. I think Tarzan is the first real superhero because he appeared in 1912 and Doc Savage was 1933. But we're splitting hairs here. Doc Savage is certainly one of the early superheroes who remained popular. Now, the Bantam books of the 60s would revitalize that popularity, and then they would start the omnibus editions. Here's number 9, which features 4 books, and if that isn't a James Bama cover, I don't know what is, but it's great material. Here is the first one, which also features 4, and it features the all-white elf, the angry canary, the running skeletons, and the swooning lady. This went on for so many years, so many wonderful years. I first encountered Doc Savage. Actually, I got to him in the late 60s, so I think it was 68 or 69 when I was up in northern Wisconsin. Imagine me being up there, huh? And I had some cousins that were up there in the Saint Germain area that I had met for the first time, and they were older guys than me, and they were probably in their late teens, and they were gung-ho over Doc Savage and his crew of guys. Okay, Doc Savage didn't work alone in these books. In fact, I will pick this baby up and I will give you the rundown on that right there. If I can find the page. I should have been better prepared for this. Doc Savage, the Man of Bronze, and his pals. They are as follows. After Clark Savage Jr., we have Rennie, or Colonel John Renwick. Then we have William Harper Littlejohn. Then we have Major Thomas J. Roberts, dubbed Long Tom. Then we have Ham, who is Brigadier General Theodore Marley Brooks. And last of all, we have Monk, who is Colonel Andrew Blodgett Mayfair. And there's a scan coming up of the back cover artwork by James Bama of Doc Savage and his team. Doc Savage did not work alone. Now, all 5 of these guys did not appear in every novel. Sometimes you get 5, sometimes you get 4, sometimes you get 2. It varied dramatically throughout the entire series. Certainly the most popular ones seem to be the early ones where he had his entire team with him solving these adventures. So another hallmark of the Doc Savage novels is Lester Dent's incredible imagination. This is a hallmark of all the pulp fiction writers who persevered and that are collected to this day. The Shadow books have the same type of thing, of course. The Spider, I'm going to cover The Shadow and the Spider. Others that I'm not going to cover, The Black Bat, The Phantom Detective. There's so many of them. The world of imagination that was just blossoming with these writers as they hit the keys on their typewriter. That's just, they go off here, they go off there. They have the most nefarious villains, plot twists, and so forth. Now, over the years, you read a lot of these, you can start to pick them apart. It is a formula. That's okay, too, because I think Lester Dent is at his peak with Doc Savage. He did write a lot of other things, and I have some. Maybe I'll show you some of the other collections. I have a Western collection here that Black Dog Books put out. So what happens is you get these plot twists that go on, the setup, what Alfred Hitchcock called the MacGuffin, and sometimes it's believable, sometimes it's a little hackneyed, sometimes it's just okay. You don't really need to put that much thought into it. It just gets you there. And the reason you get there is because Lester Dent used a lot of verbs. He used a lot of adjectives. He was an action writer. He put you there, the wind just didn't blow in their face. It whooped and hollered in their face. That type of narrative thinking went into it. It was forceful. It was dynamic. And right from chapter to chapter, and the chapters are generally pretty short. So let's take a look at The Thousand-Headed Man, which was number 2. He has 25 chapters in this one. And let's just for fun, let's grab another one. Number 10. I must have grabbed the early ones here. And when I did my scanning. I have to double check that. It doesn't matter. You can find these, and I'm encouraging you to find these. And he had 22 chapters. So, roughly about there. And these come in at about, the longer ones come in at about 150 pages. Sometimes they're a little shorter. Occasionally they might be longer. There were some, as the series progressed near the end, where they were novellas and not full-length books. And I just have the greatest respect for Lester Dent in these books. These books meant a lot to me. That's why I kept them. That's why I picked them up. Recently I picked up Fear K, and I reread Fear K just because I remembered it as something I liked, and I reread it. So, you do that now and again. It's not beyond me to pick up a Doc Savage paperback and just sit down. And you can read these in the course of an afternoon, if you have a mind to do that. The Squeaking Goblin, how's that for a classy cover? Again, the imagination that went into this stuff is just fantastic. So, for those of you that haven't read Doc Savage, I'd recommend getting a couple of the Bantam books on eBay, Etsy, or other places, and try a couple. Try 4 or 5. Mix up the series a little bit and see how you feel about it. I've noticed with booktubers in the last year, they're reading Louis L'Amour for the first time. I really admire that. And I think it's important that we do that we promote this type of thinking with these great writers from the past. Because if you're looking at Lester Dent, who, by the way, these books were published under the name Kenneth Robeson. That is a pen name. There were a few other authors that worked on some, as I mentioned. When you're looking at these guys and you're comparing it to the thriller writers today, there's no comparison for me. And I know I'm biased. Other than Preston and Child and a few others that I think have a pretty good handle on writing a riveting adventure tale, C.J. Box is on my radar right now. Obviously, Preston and Child have been on my radar for a long time, and they can do it. But most of them, they can't do it. In fact, I have an episode out there where when the copyright was taken over again by Condé Nast Publishers, they turned it over to James Patterson, who published a shadow novel. I have an episode about that. It's about the worst book ever written. I forget how I titled it. You can easily find it. It's one of the very few negative episodes I hope I have out there. James Patterson was not the right choice to work on The Shadow. He, I understand, also did a Doc Savage, maybe 2 after that, and then another Shadow. None of these books, as far as I could tell, had good reviews. I am not a James Patterson fan. I need to stress, I want to be polite here, I have nothing against the man. He's successful. He obviously has some type of talent going on. He simply, for me, was not the right guy. Him and his team, because he doesn't do much writing. He has other people do the writing based upon his plots. Him and his team are not true to the characters. And whenever you have that happen, for example, DC Comics and Batman. DC Comics doesn't handle Batman very well at all. They don't handle any of their characters very well. Whenever you have that, you have a loss of readership. And James Patterson is OUT, out. 3 strikes, pal, you're out. I will not participate in that. I have nothing against him, but whatever. There is, however, a writer out there who has worked on Doc Savage successfully. And why he can't do it now, there must be a conflict with Condé Nast. I think, and his name is Will Murray. And, I don't know. Will Murray, I believe, is the literary executor of Lester Dent's estate. So he would have more, to me, I would hope he would have more to say about what he's doing than the copyright holder of Condé Nast. But that may not be true, because he was writing the Doc Savage novels, and now it's James Patterson, and it's like, whatever. So I'm just going to show you a couple of Will Murray's. He's been writing Doc Savage in the Shadow for decades. He's doing it under Kenneth Robeson. At least most of them were. Death's Dark Domain. I think this is one of the older ones. I'm going to just set that here. We have The Secret of Satan's Spine. By the way, the cover artwork on these are published by Altus Press. The cover artist is Joe DeVito, who followed in the footsteps of Baumhofer and Bama, and he used James Bama's, stylized Widow's Peak. I have no problem with that, because that's what we expect at this point. These are really fun, entertaining books. I know I use the word fun a lot. I'm sorry, but I do. He also did a shadow book, The Sinister Shadow, which was really interesting and great. And he combined The Shadow and Doc Savage in one of his books. I'll come back to The Shadow in a later edition. And my favorite Will Murray Doc Savage book, his name's on it instead of Kenneth Robeson, is Doc Savage Skull Island. And guess who Doc Savage meets up with? This book surprised the hell out of me. It was so good that I thought, here's a modern pulp classic right here. I really feel that way. He managed to get the rights to the King Kong character, which was held by, I forget who holds it. It was, King Kong was created by Marion C. Cooper, and he put Doc Savage on Skull Island, and it works tremendously well. If you're going to read any of the Will Murrays, all of them I recommend, because I really like Will Murray. By the way, here's a picture of him. Here's a picture of Will Murray popping up. I think this was the last time I went to the Windy City Pulp and Paper Convention. I've met Will Murray several times. I don't know him very well. He signed a book for me, which was, of course, it was Mr. Calamity, Doc Savage, with cover art by Joe DeVito, as you would expect. Look at the back cover on this. And he signed it for me, so I'm really happy. Will Murray is right on target with any of the pulp fiction that he's done. He is currently writing The Spider. So when I cover The Spider, I'll show you his spiders. He has a new one out that as of today, early December, I don't have it yet, but I have the others that he did. I'm a huge Spider fan. He knows, he's not, I don't think of Will Murray as a pastiche writer. I think he's just a natural talent. I think he can write in any style. That's just my opinion of it. So, if you're interested in Doc Savage, you can start with the originals, which I would recommend going to eBay and just get 5 or 6 and see how you like them. I do recommend reading more than one. And if you like those, then try a Will Murray. These are all on Amazon. Incredibly fun material. And so my perspective is, as a young man in the late 60s, I start reading Doc Savage paperbacks. I'm a Doc Savage fan. I even like the Ron Ely movie, even though it's not a great movie. I like it because I like Ron Ely. It's just, we're talking about entertainment, entertain me, sit down for a couple of hours and, Fantastic Island, number 14, whatever you're going to read. The Freckled Shark. Good God, Lester Dent. I just can't say enough about him. The Czar of Fear. Doc Savage. Doc Savage is preeminent among aficionados and collectors of pulp fiction. It's inevitable if you become a fan of pulp fiction and you begin looking into this material for you younger readers and you younger booktubers. I say younger because I'm not. So keep that in your mind. Finally, we come to Philip Jose Farmer. One of my viewers, and I apologize, the memory is the first thing to go. He mentioned Phil Farmer. One I was talking about in another episode, I was going to get to Doc Savage, and he asked if I would talk about Phil Farmer. And I will talk about Phil Farmer's biography of Doc Savage. Doc Savage, His Apocalyptic Life, which was published. This is the Playboy, when they used to publish books, Playboy paperbacks, with, I don't think this is a James Bama cover. I can't read the signature. But he did a fictional biography after rereading all of the 180 plus books, and it's pretty entertaining, and he pieces it together. So he makes a good case here that Doc Savage is based in the Empire State Building. Lester Dent never mentioned the Empire State Building. He mentioned that he was in a prominent building in New York. I knew Philip Jose Farmer. I wouldn't say I knew him well, but I knew him well enough that he sent me a Christmas card every year for years and years, obviously until his passing. He lived in Peoria. And I have a nice file on him. I interviewed him. I spoke with him on the phone many times. I met him in person. And I may do a Philip Jose Farmer episode at some point. He explained to me, as a science fiction writer, he did write a pastiche of Tarzan, Doc Savage, and others in his many science fiction fantasy novels. He was really an entertaining writer as well. So Philip Jose Farmer, when I spoke to him, he explained to me his influences, which would have been Edgar Rice Burroughs and Lester Dent and these pulp writers. And he specifically mentioned Doc Savage and Tarzan as influences. And he mentioned to me something else that I heard from a few other people from his generation that said it. Forrest J. Ackerman told me virtually the same thing. There was a movie called The Thief of Baghdad, a silent film made and starring Douglas Fairbanks. If you get a chance, I believe there's a Blu-ray restored version of that film. Look at that movie and look at the imagination that went into creating that movie. It holds up remarkably well today. The visuals are absolutely stunning. The expansive sets, the special effects are they still hold up. The giant spider that Fairbanks is fighting. It's an incredible work of imagination, and it works hand in hand with the incredible imagination of the pulp writers like Lester Dent, Doc Savage. The extraordinary twists and turns, the problems that Doc Savage and the other pulp heroes would uncover. How are they going to survive this? How will they get through it? Yeah, sometimes it can be a little corny by today's standards, but the level of breathless excitement never lets up. And if you put yourself into that mode, you'll be fine. It is, and I want to say this, it is absolutely necessary that you suspend your disbelief when you're reading pulp fiction. You have to suspend your disbelief. It's like watching a B-movie matinee show on Saturday morning for a nickel, and you've got your popcorn. You're going to suspend your disbelief, and you're going to watch some cheesy movie. If you allow that to happen, you will enjoy these books beyond compare. And man, oh man, what a speech for Doc Savage, Lester Dent, and the Pulps. I hope it made sense. I really do. If it didn't, whatever. Again, I think you people who haven't read Doc Savage should try him out. I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover, and I thank you so much for listening. I hope you catch a pulp fever. Until next time, stay well, stay happy. Feed your brain, please. Read a book.